Today on Stories We Weren't Supposed to Tell, we have Ashley's story. The title is She Refused to Be Another Statistic. I picked this title because studies show that when a partner strangles someone, the victim becomes 7 times more likely to be killed by that person later. Sit with that for a second. 7 times more likely to be killed by that person later. This is a story about surviving the kind of abuse that too often turns deadly, and about the terrifying reality of loving someone who keeps trying to convince you that your pain never happened. This episode contains discussions of domestic violence, strangulation, coercive control, and emotional abuse. Please listen at your own discretion. Ashley's story is difficult, but necessary, because the most dangerous relationships rarely look dangerous in the beginning. This is Ashley's story, and I'm going to let her tell it.
The first question I want to ask is, when you first met him, what felt intoxicating about the connection with him?
He asked really interesting questions, interesting ways.
Mm-hmm.
He was very intelligent, and I could deep dive into any kind of subject, and he could go there with me, and not a lot of people like that level of depth. That was probably the most attractive thing, like just how smart he was.
Okay. What was one of the first red flags that you noticed?
I had known him for literally about a week, and he had asked me on a date, and I really wanted to go with him. I had been out with him 2 times. This would have been like a 3rd date. And so I was like, immediately, yes. But then I was like, oh, I forgot. I actually am already supposed to go out with somebody tonight. And I kind of forgot about the date because I'd been so interested in him, right?
Yeah.
And so I responded with, can I see you a little bit later? I forgot I've already got a person I'm meeting tonight, and I feel bad canceling last minute. And he just was extremely aggressive and abusive verbally about how disrespectful I was and how I was manipulative and how dare I treat a man that way. Him and the other guy, I was being disrespectful to both of them, wasting the other guy's time, wasting his time. Like, it was a very aggressive conversation.
Okay.
And I was so shocked by it. In fact, I mean, literally, I barely know this guy, and I was sobbing on the phone. Like, it was just so abusive.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I just thought to myself, and I remember thinking the next morning, that was crazy. That was insane. I don't even know this guy. Like, I cannot believe that that level of abuse would happen verbally from somebody I don't even know, and I blocked him on everything.
Okay. You mentioned in your story that you sent over to me that he enjoyed getting you upset.
Yes.
So was that the first time he pushed your buttons?
Yeah, I could tell it was like a way he measured his own value or significance by how riled up he could get me.
Okay.
And so I noticed he almost got pleasure out of it because he was actually, he acted like I was the most repulsive thing to him by even considering going out with another guy when I had expressed that I was interested in dating him.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me to just set a boundary and block him, like, it shook his world. Like, he had no idea what to do with himself because I had taken away, I guess, his power. And I don't think he'd ever experienced that before.
Okay. You blocked him and you felt better. What kind of made you backstep and unblock him? Like, why did you reach back out to him?
Well, I think already at that point there was a form of trauma bond just from that one experience with him. Because it had been very intense, very quickly, very intimate, very quickly. And so I was already quite fused to him in such a short period of time. So that's the best I can come up with, is just there was this, like, extremely strong pull.
Mm-hmm.
And so I unblocked him and sent a message like, hey, I'm really only going to do this once, but I'm sorry things kind of went the way they did. I'd like to see if we could turn over a different leaf.
What was his response to that?
That'd be great. Let's go to dinner. And I showed up to dinner with him and his little buddy. He took care of a adult disabled person full time. And so we went to dinner, the three of us together. He was very affectionate, very sweet, very loving the whole time we were at dinner.
How was it after that, after you guys decided to put the best foot forward and try again?
I felt like it was really good for a couple of months. I think he knew I was capable of walking away because I had already shown him I could do that. And so he was on his best behavior. May, June, July, really good behavior. No issues there at all. And then the first physical encounter I had was in August. So we had kind of been dating for about 3.5, 4 months at that point. And we'd already been talking about marriage because I thought, wow, that first week must have been a fluke,
Mm-hmm.
And I had made him angry about my birthday. So we had celebrated my birthday the day before, and he had decided the actual day of my birthday he would go with his brothers and hang out with his brothers who were in town. And he had kind of begrudgingly invited me, but he invited me, I guess. And I went, and I don't know, he just seemed irritated I was there the whole time. And we were kind of fighting about it. And that's when we were in his bedroom, laying in his bed, and he had shoved me out of the bed and I had hit the wall. And I remember getting up and just being inside anybody be physically aggressive with me in my life, really.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not a male. And I thought, wow, I was just horrified and scared to death. And I remember just getting up, grabbing my things and storming out of his room. And he got up and kind of followed me and grabbed my arm. And I remember my immediate response was absolute in fight. I just turned around and said, "Do not touch me," and just stormed out of the house. And again, blocked him on everything. I think I sent him an email that just said, I just need you to understand why I had to just walk away. I was so drawn to you. We had such a great connection, but I've never had a man lay a hand on me in my entire life, and you're not allowed to do that to me. And I just don't see any way to come back from that. And he seemed to, he latched on to the email access because I guess that was the only way he could reach me. And just more or less said, I think we can work this out. I'm sorry. And then he more or less said, "I think you're exaggerating. I don't think you're remembering things right. That's not really what happened. You yelled at me. You told me if I touched you again, I would kill you." And he just started twisting things back to where I was the one that overreacted, was being aggressive. And I definitely cross boundaries, not him.
Looking back, how did his reaction change your memory of what happened when he was telling you that, all of this stuff? Did you think, oh, well, maybe I was in the wrong?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because then I start thinking, wow, maybe I am the problem here. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I did overreact. Maybe I did say that. Wow, that was excessive. Oh, yeah, sometimes maybe we do respond in the wrong way when we're angry or upset or scared. I guess he's not the only one that overreacts. So then it's just I started second guessing everything and thought, wow, maybe I'm part of this. And maybe the fight was bigger than it needed to be because of my contribution and I should have stayed calmer, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Now talk to me about the proposal.
So really, he proposed to me the next month in September.
Okay. How did he propose to you?
It was really dumb. We had already been talking about marriage. He told me he'd already ordered the ring. I remember thinking, okay, well, if you're going to propose, just get it over with already. And he's like, "I'm planning things." And I can't remember what I said. He's like, "Well, do you want to just get your ring today?" And I just kind of laughed and giggled. I was like, "If you're ready, yeah, that would be great." And he was like, "Okay, where do you want to go to eat?" And I just said, "Crab." And so he took me to some random restaurant, and literally in the parking lot outside of the restaurant, he pulled out the ring and said something along the lines of, if you so choose to accept this mission, I will, put the ring on, or something stupid. It was totally not prepared. It was really lame, really cheesy. And I remember just looking at him like, huh, that's really how you're going to propose. Okay.
All right.
All right. um, and I just thought, well, that's weird, but I guess proposals don't matter. And I just said, all right, whatever. And when I brought it up later on, he's like, well, that's your fault. You told me you wanted your ring. I could have done it way better. Like, of course I could have planned more, but you made me do it that night. So then again, his lack of preparation and proposal and effort was my fault again.
Oh, so when you guys were together, everything was your fault, I take it?
Everything.
Everything. So did the relationship feel like it was moving too fast? Like faster than you could emotionally process?
In a lot of ways, yes. He marked us as in a relationship, I think a couple weeks into the relationship on Facebook. And he did it without asking me. He did it without my permission. He did it without talking to me. So he marked us as in a relationship on Facebook. And I remember calling him and saying, so we're in a relationship publicly on Facebook, I guess. And he was like, well, yeah, you aren't dating anybody else, right? And I thought to myself, I mean, not really. No, I'm spending all my time with you. And he was like, so what's the big deal? And I just thought, well, I really wasn't ready for that. But I mean, at the same time, he almost challenged it like, why? Do you want to see other men's? And I thought, oh, okay, well, I guess not.
Yeah.
So it almost locked down exclusivity without my permission.
Talk to me about the day you guys got married. How was that?
He complained the whole time about having a wedding. He wanted to go to the courthouse. He didn't want to have everybody over. He didn't want to have his family, his friends, his mother, his parents. He didn't want a wedding. He just wanted to go to the courthouse and get married. And I remember saying to him, well, a lot of times we don't have weddings for you and I. Sometimes we have weddings for our mothers because it's just a kind thing to do to let our mothers and our families and everybody be part of it.
Well,
And
it's
I'm
a
like,
celebration for sure.
yeah. And so he was really difficult, moody about everything, threw a fit about every piece of the wedding. The suit wasn't right. The day wasn't right. I didn't do it the way he wanted me to. He was annoyed by who was there, who wasn't there. Everything about the wedding was wrong. He more or less said, unless we're having a big blowout party where everybody on the planet is there and we spend $100,000 and I jump out of a helicopter to marry you, I don't want a wedding.
Wow.
And so it was just like nothing was right. It was either all like this big wedding that nobody could afford, or we're going to the courthouse. And those were the only two options that would suffice. And he was really honoring the whole wedding, refused to smile in pictures. When he decided he was done, he literally pulled me out of the wedding while there were still guests there that were trying to say hi to us and give us hugs and congratulations. And he literally made me leave my own wedding, like while people were still coming.
Wow. When you married him, did you feel safe, or was it more like a hopeful thing? Like after we get married, everything will be okay?
There were a lot of things about him that made me feel safe. He was very capable, very smart, pretty hard worker. Clever, good entrepreneur. Like there were a lot of things about him that I found very attractive and that made me feel safe. Um, I kind of found out later most of it was performance and not real ability, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We started a company together before we were even engaged. So we went into business together before we were engaged and before we were married.
Okay. So how was it being in business with him? Like, did both of you guys run the show, or was it just more like he did it? How was that?
He was really good at some things and really bad at others. When it came down to like administrative, like the thought process, the thinking, the idea creation and building the bones, like the paperwork and jumping through the hoops of making it a legitimate business, he was great at that. But when it came down to actually showing up and working and doing work, like he very begrudgingly did that. Um, I would say alcoholism played a huge part in all of this because he was frequently just, I felt like he was motivated to get to alcohol as quickly and as often as possible.
Okay. In your summary, you said the morning after your wedding was explosive. That he had done a couple things the next morning. Do you want to walk me through that?
Yeah, he would constantly kind of humiliate me about how much stuff I had and how much clutter I had. He said that I lived with just too many things and everything needed to be downsized. And it was just one of those things where he would just pick a box or pick a room and just start throwing stuff away. And he didn't understand I had decades of memories in these rooms and these boxes. And to him, it was just stuff everywhere, you know? And he lived very minimalistic, like almost nothing, owned nothing. You know, he prided himself on being able to pack up and move in a weekend. And, you know, I was the mother of 4 children and had built a life in a home, you know, a 6-bedroom home that I owned before I ever met him. And I had a whole house full of stuff. And he, you know, kind of lived on the idea of you should be able to pack up 2 rooms and be done. So he was throwing away things and like really aggressively like getting rid of things that were important to me. And I just remember thinking, like, stop touching my stuff, stop throwing away my stuff. These things are important to me. Like, it's not just stuff. And it turned into this huge, epic fight, like over the top. It was physical, there was shoving. I think at one point I was carrying his laptop and was like, how would you feel if I threw your laptop away? And I can't remember what happened because quite honestly, I don't remember. He says I broke his laptop. I think he shoved me into a wall while holding his laptop and it broke. But then he was like, "Oh, so this is you paying me back for destroying all of your stuff. Now you're breaking my computer." Um, and then he went and grabbed our marriage license we had signed the night before and ripped it up into a bunch of pieces and says, "I don't want to be married to you anymore."
So how did you feel when he did that?
I'm just shock and like betrayal and abandonment and horror. I mean, just I was devastated if I'm being honest with you. I just had this wedding and he was like, I'm done the next day.
Okay. So he ripped up your marriage certificate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what were you feeling when he was ripping that up? Were you like, "Oh my gosh, this is the end, this is over," or were you like worried for your safety? What were your thoughts going through your head when he did that?
I was always a little afraid of him because he would get so angry and so aggressive.
Mhm.
Um, he would be angry and aggressive and push my buttons until I would lose my cool. And then as soon as I would lose my cool, he would become an absolute stonewall, wouldn't respond, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't acknowledge my presence. There were times when he would go days in the same house with me, pretending like I didn't exist.
Okay. And then he went ahead and taped that whole thing back up and still mailed it into the state. So that way you guys were still married. So he was putting on a show. You know, who knows what he was actually really thinking at the time, but he did end up being like, "Oh no, I'm sorry."
Yeah, he would always come back around, you know. Sometimes it was in a couple of hours. Sometimes it would take days, but he would always come back around. And then he would be very loving and very, very sweet and very kind and, just over the top loving, or at least it would feel that way in comparison to what I had just gone through, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. You can finish your thought.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So that push-pull cycle that he was doing to you, how did that distort your sense of reality?
Um, well, a lot of the time, I when he would come back around, it would be like it wasn't that big of a deal. Why are you being so dramatic? You did this. You did this. Do you not remember doing this? Do you not remember doing this? I'm the one being abused here. You're abusive. Don't you remember the things you've said? Don't you remember the things you've done? Um, I remember there was one distinct time where he had called me a bitch, and I had said, "Don't call me that." And he said it again, like aggressively, like in my face, "God, you're not allowed to call me that." And he said, "What are you going to do about it?" And then he said it again. And I remember I slapped him in the face, which was something very strange for me to do. But it was almost like I could see him like internally like grin, like, there we go. That's the reaction I was going for.
Yeah, the reactive abuse.
Yeah.
When they push you so far and then they're like, see, you are the crazy one.
And I just thought to myself, you're attacking me verbally. You're in my face. You're being aggressive. You're being mean, and you're doing it on purpose. And then you're looking at me like I am an abuser for responding. And I remember being mortified that I slapped him in the face. I mean, it was instant like horror, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry. I remember grabbing his face, like, I'm so sorry. That wasn't okay. That was inappropriate. Like, I mean, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I'm so sorry I did that. And he was like, "You're abusive. You're a narcissist." Like, I mean, he just started telling me all these things about myself. And I remember thinking, maybe he's right. Maybe I am abusive. Maybe I am a narcissist. And I remember I started studying like narcissism, be like, wow, maybe I am one.
That's
And
usually the cue that you're not. But go ahead.
and I saw traits of like, yeah, I mean, I guess that could be narcissistic. I mean, obviously, I've got signs of this and levels of this. And the more I studied, the more I kind of realized we're all a little narcissistic.
Absolutely
And,
agree with that.
and it's a spectrum. And I was like, yeah, I can see how I can see myself on this spectrum. And I'm open to the idea that maybe I have narcissism, right? Like, sure,
Mhm.
actually, I probably do. But I remember reading and reading and reading and thinking, but I'm pretty sure you're the narcissist. Like, I remember thinking, wow, okay, I'm pretty sure he's the narcissist. And I came to him and I said, I mean, I think we all show up on the spectrum here. I think we all have this. I'm not saying you're a narcissist, but I think there is some narcissism in you as well. And he just could not handle that. Like, he told me I was being so abusive just by even mentioning it or suggesting it, which is so interesting because I thought, but you're okay calling me those things?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it was a really rough first year. Every time we would fight, every time things would go south, he would like pack up his stuff and like drive away. Um, and he would like linger to see if I would beg him to stay. I could always, I felt like I could literally just be outside of myself and watch him trying to see if I would chase him.
Yeah.
Because he wanted me to. He wanted me to get reactive. He wanted me to chase him. He wanted me to act like I couldn't live without him. And so he would poke and poke and poke and push and push and push when we would fight until I would react. he would leave the home and come back. He would leave the home and then come back. He would leave and then come back and then come in the room where I was. And if I didn't react, he would leave, but then he'd come back in the room again, and he would start doing things to see if that would be the thing that would get me to react.
Okay. Now, I want to go kind of to the turning point of your guys' relationship, and I want to talk a little bit about when he strangled you. And I do want you to take your time through this once again. The title of your episode is going to be I Refuse to Be Another Statistic, because I don't know, have you ever looked into the statistics of strangulation?
I've had them explained to me over a courtroom by a judge.
Yeah. The non-fatal strangulation is a major warning sign for homicide. Usually if your partner has strangled you, it's mind-boggling of how much of a percentage it just increases. I think it's 7 times more likely to be killed by them, which is huge. And so basically I want to say that I'm very happy that you left him and that you're still alive. And I know that you went through some stuff with him after, but do you remember the first time?
I remember it in graphic detail. I remember everything.
Okay.
So yeah, I can explain it really well.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I found out he'd been cheating on me with the woman I had begged him to stop talking to because I told him it was going to go that direction.
Mhm.
I had been in a previous marriage and I knew how these things went. And I told him these kind of relationships develop into affairs. That's just how it goes. There's no other way for it to go unless you stop talking to her. And it was a woman he had been in a relationship with previously.
Mhm.
He just kept telling me I was crazy, I was crazy, I was crazy until I found absolute proof he couldn't deny. And then it was like, oh, yeah, I did that.
Mhm.
And he would justify it with, we were in a fight. I was definitely going to divorce you in the morning. It wasn't cheating.
Okay.
He slept with her twice. I found out I was having a night where we were both home. He was drinking a lot and I was drinking, which I rarely do, but I was just not okay. And I just remember telling him, like, I just need to grieve a little bit. I'm like really sad and I just need you to leave me alone and let me be really sad. And I went into our room and he followed me in there and he was trying to be like affectionate and loving. And I remember telling him, I really don't want this right now. I just want to grieve. And something about me rejecting him or pushing him away hurt him. I'm not sure. I don't know how his mind works, but I remember I went out into the living room to get a drink of water and go back into our room. And I guess he took that as an aggressive something. And he ran into our bedroom and he slammed the door and he locked it. And my phone was in there. And I remember saying, I need my phone. Can you please just give me my phone? Like, I don't understand why you're doing this. I'm not mad at you. I'm not in a fight with you. I'm not yelling at you. I just asked for space. I don't understand why you're doing that. And he said, you asked for space and then came into my space, and that was an act of war. And I remember just like, ramming my shoulder into the door, like, please just give me my phone. If you won't let me in there, at minimum, let me have my phone. And he wouldn't, and I kept ramming my shoulder into the door, and the door actually broke open. And I remember pausing and stopping and thinking, wow, that's only supposed to work in the movies. And I remember just kind of like internally like thinking, that was weird. And he was filming me when the door broke. So he had his camera up and ready to film me. And then he put his phone down and ran at me and I remember just kind of like a bull in a china shop. He just ran into me with his whole body and he threw me back out of the room. And I landed on my tailbone and I was just immediately like, ow. Like, it was like so much pain I can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I stood up and I walked in the room and I grabbed his face and I was like, why are you like this? I don't understand why you're like this. And he said later on that because I scratched his face that just set him off, and he started strangling me. And I remember he strangled me, and then he finally let me go, and I climbed in the bed, just kind of in the fetal position, and I was just wailing because I was scared, hurt, terrified, all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he jumped on me again and started strangling me and started screaming at me, shut up, shut up. And he kept saying it over and over and over again. And then he let me go again. And I remember, like, I don't know how else I'm supposed to react right now. I'm sobbing, I'm wailing, I'm terrified, I'm crying, and I'm all the things. And he grabbed my throat again and got on top of me and started yelling, shut up, shut up. And he just kept saying it. And after the third time, it kind of dawned on me, like, I might die, like, he might kill me. I've got to talk him down or he's going to kill me. And I remember he let me go the third time, and I looked at him and said, I don't want to die. I'm a mother. I have 4 children, and they need me, and I don't want to die. And he started strangling me again. And after that, he let me go, and I was trying to run away, and he wouldn't let me leave the room. He just kept, like, throwing me back into the room, and he wouldn't let me have my phone back still, and he wouldn't let me out of the room. And I don't that part, I think it all just gets kind of blurry at that point. I know that there was shoving. I know he grabbed me. I know he pushed me. At one point, he pulled his fist back, like he was gonna punch me, and then he didn't. Um, and then he just walked out of the room and left me there. And I remember I just kind of collapsed and just could not stop sobbing. And he came back in the room and said something like, I'm sorry. Can we talk about it? And I just literally could not compose myself. I was just sobbing uncontrollably. And I remember just saying to him, do you realize what you just did to me? Like, and he just kind of looked at me like, you made me do it. You scratched my face. And it was just like the most bizarre thing I could possibly explain. He wouldn't give me my phone back. I remember I ran out the house. I was going to try and run to one of the neighbors' houses when I finally got away. And then I thought, well, if I go knock on these neighbors' doors, they're going to call the police, and the police are going to arrest him. And I don't want to hurt him. I was so scared for my own life, but as soon as I realized that he would get arrested, I couldn't do that to him, which is insanity when you think about it, right?
Absolutely. But it's so common, you know? It's so
And
common.
so he still wouldn't give me my phone back. I remember I just went into my room and I laid down and I fell asleep. And he fell asleep. And the pain didn't go away. And I was having a really hard time swallowing. And so I knew he was passed out pretty good with alcohol. So I thought I could probably go find my phone at that point. But I couldn't find it. And I was going to go to the hospital just because I knew that there was something wrong and that I needed to get checked out. But he woke up and, he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I was going to go to the hospital. Like, I'm having a hard time swallowing and it hurts to sit and hurts to stand. And I think you broke my tailbone. And he walked over and he handed me my phone and he turned on the light and he started looking at my face and he started looking at my neck. And he was like, you seem okay. He's like, I don't see any issues. Like, you seem like you're all right. And I was like, okay. And I just took that for what it was. And I just went back into my room and went to sleep. Because again, I realized if I go to the hospital, they're going to ask questions and they're going to call the police. And so I just went to sleep again. And I remember waking up in the morning and I started talking to him about, like, help me understand why you did that. Like, I don't understand. Like, and he started changing every detail of everything I experienced. He started twisting things around. He started saying that never happened. You did this, you did that. I never pushed you out the door. I never pushed you on your tailbone. That never happened. I did not strangle you more than once. Like, he just started saying things that were just blatant lies. And I remember there was this click in my brain where I just went, he is going to twist this story, this most horrifying experience I've ever had in my life, and he is going to twist this story and make me feel like I'm crazy. And I remember distinctly thinking, I will never let you convince me that something that happened to me didn't happen to me ever again. And I pulled out my phone and I called the police. And the police came and I told them what happened. He told them what he thought happened. We both wrote statements and they put him in handcuffs and took him to jail. And the police convinced me to go to a hospital. So I did. I went to the hospital, the full forensic makeup that they do.
Mm-hmm.
That was horrible, by the way.
I couldn't imagine.
I hate to tell women how horrible that is, but it's really quite horrible. It's very intrusive. They photograph your body and they, go dig under your fingernails. And I mean, it's like a forensic thing. They have a very special, nurse that takes care of it, and they have an advocate in there with you. And I remember looking at her and she was like, trying to figure out what my circumstances were, what my situation was. And I looked at her and said, I'm fine. I own my own house. It's not his, it's mine. I have a great job. I make plenty of money. I'm not financially dependent on him. And I remember just looking at her and I said, and the thing I'm the most worried about right now is him. I said, the most horrifying thing I think I've ever seen is the man I'm married to hauled out of my house in handcuffs. And I remember she looked at me and she said, I understand what you're feeling, but why is the thing you're the most worried about right now anybody other than you? And I just thought, that's a great question.
Happen. Anybody who has been in any sort of abusive relationship wants to protect them. It's our motherly, it's our love, and they rewire everything to where we're always second guessing ourselves. So 100%, you're worried about them, and you shouldn't be, but you can't help it. So I do understand what you're saying there. Tell me about what happened. You got a restraining order right after that, correct? He went to jail. Right?
Yeah, they got me the immediate temporary. And then I had to go to a hearing for a permanent protective order. I didn't talk to him at all in those 2 weeks leading up to that.
Okay.
And I went to the hearing. My dad came with me, and 2 of my girlfriends came with me. And it was really hard. I mean, I remember walking into the courtroom and seeing him for the first time across the rooms. And I remember just like severe anxiety and panic, like absolute anxiety and panic. Like, he's going to be so mad at me for all of this. And I was terrified of him being mean to me and being mad at me. I was terrified of him in the courtroom. I remember my dad and my friends kind of sat me down and kind of created like a wall, a barrier between him and I, so he couldn't look at me, or I didn't have to look at him. I went into the courtroom. I explained to the judge what happened. And I think he said, you should see the text messages she sent me. She's told me, like, she's so sorry. She wants to be together. I don't remember what I even said to him, but he started reading all of these messages he said that I sent him and explaining them to the judge. And he's like, she's not scared of me, obviously. And the judge looked at me and said, do you still want the protective order? And I said, I love my husband. And I remember saying, he needs help. And I don't know how to help him, but he's not well. And I said, and I do love him. And my messages probably express how much I do genuinely love him, but I am scared of him. And I do want the protective order. I don't trust him anymore. And so she granted a 3-year protective order. But then he advocated for the ability to communicate with me so that we could work out the logistics of our business and the houses and the stuff that we owned and things like that. And as soon as she granted that permission, I mean, I got a message from him the next day of, do you really want to get divorced? And I think I responded with no, but I don't think there's any other option. Staying together would be impossible at this point. And I think he said something along the lines of nothing's impossible. And so it just kind of, he started working back in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long did you have the protective order for him until you decided to backtrack on it? How long was that?
I think it was about a month. We had started talking. It might have been more like 2 months, actually. We had started talking. He was being very sweet, very apologetic. Like, I'm going to therapy. I'm not drinking anymore. I'll go to counseling with you. I think we started seeing counseling. He told me he was seeing his own counselor, his own therapist. Just the perfect version of him kind of showed up again. And he just kept pushing for, I mean, we're breaking the law every time we talk. We're breaking the law. If I see you, we're breaking the law. If any of these things happen, I need you to go have the protective order dropped. And I said, well, how do I know that the reason you're being nice and doing all these things for me isn't just so I'll go drop the protective order? Because the DA's office in the state were pursuing him for a felony at this point. And I said, for all I know, you're just being sweet and nice, so I won't testify against you. And so I'll get the protective order dropped and the charges dropped. And he was like, well, you can't drop the charges. The state's coming after me with or without your help. And I was like, I guess that's true, right? And so, yeah, probably a month or two before I went and appeared before the judge and asked to have the protective order dropped. And I remember that's when I think she read the statistics to me of like, are you sure you want to drop these, this protective order? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so she granted it, of course.
Yeah.
And then I was subpoenaed to come to court and testify against him. So I let him know, like, my hands are tied at this point. I'm required to testify against you. I don't really have a choice. And him and his attorney were meeting. And I remember he came to me like the day before court and said, all you have to say when you go to court tomorrow is you invoke your spousal privilege and they can't make you testify. And I remember thinking, oh, so I don't have to testify? I didn't really want to anyway. I didn't want to be on the stand. I didn't want to relive this in front of a room of people,
Yeah.
And so that's what I said. And they dropped everything against him because I was the only witness. So.
Okay. Did he like start isolating you from people at that point, or?
My family and everybody and friends and, well, really everybody. Nobody wanted him back in my life anymore. And I was like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll get him to come back around. You just got to keep being awesome, right? Like, if you keep being awesome and you keep doing all these things, they'll see that it was just a bad day and a bad experience and a bad choice. And it was just the influence of alcohol, like everybody will see, right?
Yeah.
And so he was really patient for a little while. But then it like hit a point where he was like, well, if they're not going to accept me, then you as my wife should stop associating with them because you're supposed to choose your husband and your spouse above everybody else. And I just remember saying, well, you got to have patience and an understanding for why they're mad at you. I mean, this stuff happened and they're mad about it. You hurt their daughter, you hurt their friend. And he would start the narrative of, yeah, and you spun a story and you spun it well, so of course everyone believes you. And I remember, like, so he started, like, just adamantly just digging his heels in. We were even going to marriage counseling, and even in counseling, he would say, like, it wasn't as bad as she says it was. It didn't happen like that. She's a brilliant saleswoman. She knows how to sell a story. Um, and she knows it. And he was like, you come from a family of salespeople. You all know how to get people on your side. You know how to sell something. And I remember just thinking, I mean, those things are kind of true, right? Like, I am good at those things. Maybe I did spin the story more than I realized. Maybe I was being dramatic more than I realized. Like, maybe it is my fault everyone hates him because I told stories. And my family and friends would frequently say to me, no, you downplayed things. Like, we had to pull information out of you. You didn't tell us stuff unless we pulled it out of you. And most of the people that knew what happened found out secondhand. You didn't tell them.
Yeah.
Um, but every time I would go anywhere where he wasn't welcome, he would make my life kind of a living hell when I would get home. Um, just just make it impossible to be there. Pick a fight with me, refuse to talk to me for days, go back to the pretending like I didn't exist. One of the conditions of him moving back into the house was that he wouldn't bring alcohol to the house. So he would have alcohol out in his car parked out on the street. And then he would have alcohol in his car parked in the garage. And then he would have alcohol in the garage. And all of these things weren't having alcohol in the house. So he would just like gradually like chip away at my boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And then once alcohol was in the house, it was like, well, what's the big difference between having it in the house versus the garage? I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And and so my boundaries would just get completely worn down until I would just cave.
Yeah.
And then I would just feel so guilty and miserable. I would get severe anxiety at the thought of even going to like a family party because I already knew what would happen when I would get home is that he would make my life a living hell.
Yeah.
So I stopped wanting to go out and I stopped wanting to go to family parties. Um, I remember fighting with my parents frequently about, you just got to forgive him. Like he's trying to be better. And I remember them saying, we haven't seen anything that indicates he's trying to be better. He's not, he's stopped going to therapy. He's drinking again. Um, my parents came over on Easter, I think it was, because I had not gone to see them. They came over to the house on Easter to bring the kids like a present or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what happened. Me and the kids went outside into the driveway to talk with my parents because they didn't really want to come in the house and be around him.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out to the driveway while I was out there talking with my parents, and he grabbed me and he tried to pull me in the house. And he said, "You're not allowed to speak with them." And he tried to drag me in the house.
Oh man.
And I remember my mom and dad grabbed me and like, held on to me for dear life because they were like terrified, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at him and said, "Stop. Um, like, you're not supposed to do this, like, you're being absolutely ridiculous." And he went inside the house. And I remember my parents literally turned and looked at me and said, "What on earth are you doing, Ashley? What are you doing?" And they just kind of packed up and left. And I went into the house and fought with him about it, saying, you want everybody to forgive you. You want everybody to think that you're different and that you're doing better. I'm like, but you just literally showed them exactly who they think you are. So
Yeah.
congratulations, you've just sealed your own fate. And I remember he called them and apologized and said, "I'm sorry for acting that way." But at that point, my parents assumed it was just a fake forced apology.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it was just kind of the back and forth for about a year and a half, I think, is what it ended up being. And then there was an incident with my daughter where he was just bulldozing through the house. She had said something disrespectful to him. He just could not handle it. He was rampaging. He was throwing her stuff. He was saying, he was just kind of just being a lunatic, really. I don't know how else to describe it. Just an absolute irrational response to something that every parent experiences. And we all would just say that was disrespectful. You're grounded, but to him, it was just like punish and destroy is how it felt. And I remember I finally just said, you've got three choices. You can leave the house, you can calm down, or I will call the police and have them make you leave. And he said to me, this is something he said to me often. He said, you're weaponizing the police against me. That's what you always do. You always weaponize the police against me. And I remember thinking, I only weaponize them when you make me. Like, I've given you two other options. Go stay somewhere else for the night, or calm down. And he said, this is my house. I can act however I want, whenever I want, and you all have to deal with it. And I said, well, it's our house too,
Yeah.
And nobody in any position of authority is going to make us deal with this. And so he said, fine, then I'm moving out and I'm leaving because you're not allowed to tell me what I can and can't do. And I said, you're never going to be able to ever live with other people if your expectation is you have to be able to act however you want and everybody else has to deal with it.
Yeah.
He moved out, and I think he thought that I was going to beg him to I just filed for divorce.
Okay.
This before or after your guys' trip to Florida? I think you said it was Florida?
Yeah, so the strangulation happened in July of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
We went on a vacation in September of 2024.
Okay.
If 2-liter bottles of vodka,
Mm-hmm.
like just an amount of vodka in 5 days on vacation.
Wow.
At one point, disappeared on me because he said I was being dramatic or emotional. I remember, we got in a fight. I told him, you've been calling me. I said, I've been calling you. I've been texting you. You've been not responding. Like, we're in another state and I don't know where you are. And I leaned over him to show him my phone and my call log, how many times I called him, and he headbutted me. And I stood up and was like, what the heck? And then he stood up again and headbutted me again. And I remember just thinking, I am so done. You're not allowed to touch me, because I had set a really firm boundary. You're not allowed to touch me or I will call the police.
Mm-hmm.
And it's over. And, he started groveling, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I lost my temper. I know I'm not allowed to touch you. I'm so sorry I did that. And I remember I was pretty resolved to file for divorce when we got home that trip.
Mm-hmm.
Deathly ill. We actually ended up going straight to the ER from the airport, and he was admitted for severe pancreatitis, and his organs started shutting down. He was put on dialysis and intubated and put on a feeding tube, and I genuinely thought he was going to die. And I remember thinking, well, if this doesn't set him straight, I don't know what will. And he ended up being in the hospital for almost 2 weeks, and it was a horrible experience for me, watching my husband almost die.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he was sharing the story with our next door neighbor about how he almost died, and his next door neighbor literally said, that must have been so horrible for your wife. That breaks my heart. And I remember he was annoyed that the neighbor empathized with me.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the one that almost died. Why are you worried about her? Right?
Yeah.
But he got sober for a while because,
He had
to. Yeah. So he didn't drink at all for October and November. But then he started drinking again in December, and that kind of led into this incident with my daughter in February, and that's when I was just like, all right, we're done.
So before this happened with your daughter, did he ever do anything else to your children? Or was that the moment that you realized, like, oh no, my kids are endangered as well. My kids are afraid as well. Was that like the big turning point of where it's like, hey, it's time?
Yeah, when I realized he was turning what he had done to me onto my daughter, that was the absolute breaking point for me. Because I can handle a lot.
Mhm.
I can deal with a lot, but like she's 14, I think she was 13 or 14 at the time, and I just thought to myself, this isn't fair. This isn't equal playing field. This isn't two adults fighting. This is a child being absolutely terrorized by an adult, and it's not fair.
Mhm.
And so, yes, that was a huge turning point for me, is when he turned that level of just kind of insanity on her. I realized, like, no, we won't live like this. I won't make them live like this. And she had done things to them previously, sure. Like, there have been like fighting and like, you know, disagreements. He'd been more aggressive than I liked. He'd never had kids. He'd never been married. So I kind of chalked it up to, he doesn't know how to be a parent. I've got to teach him how to be a parent. I remember thinking, like, I mean, all of us get newborn babies and we get to figure out and learn how to be parents as they age. He was just kind of thrown into this role. So I tried to have a lot of grace for him, but this is the final straw for me, where I was like, no, this is just way too much.
Okay, so when you filed for divorce, what did he just let it happen, or did he do some pushback? Or tell me a little bit about your guys' divorce process.
Yeah, he tried to strong arm and bully me and like make me give him things that he wasn't entitled to. He wanted me to like give him access to my assets. Um, I mean, we'd only been together, married for 3 years, and we'd split in the middle of that 3 years. You know what I mean? And I remember thinking, like, you're not entitled to any of these assets that I own. Like, and he was like, well, then I don't want to pay any of the debts. And I was like, you incurred these debts while we were married. You have to pay them. There was just a lot of like him trying to bulldoze me and make me just give him everything. Um, and then him using that as a refusal to agree to any of the terms of divorce unless I gave him what he asked for,
Yeah.
which were unreasonable requests, right? So he
Mhm.
was kind of holding my ability to divorce him over my head in exchange for just like financial abuse.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
So just kind of want to reflect on your life now. What do you understand now that you couldn't see then?
Oh,
I know there's a lot, but
my to- my my tolerance is very low. My boundaries, I don't budge at all. Um, I can see now how he was wearing down on my boundaries. And I can also see how men or women in general can try and use empathy. And I'm a pretty strong girl. I can handle a lot. I'm extremely capable. And I kind of saw how he tapped into my ability to handle and carry a lot to kind of give me the role of holding it all together and carrying it all. And just because I can do that doesn't mean I should. Just because I
100%.
am strong doesn't mean I should have to be the only strong one and the only capable one. And so going into dating this last year, I've been, as soon as I feel like a dynamic is, you're going to expect me to carry the emotional load, I'm done. I'm like immediately done. My tolerance for that is at a 0.
as it should be. If someone is listening to this that's kind of in the early stage of the same pattern, what would you tell them?
Um, Stop talking yourself out of your instincts and your intuition. Your gut is right. No, you're not crazy, and no, you're not overreacting. Walk away.
Mm, That's a good one. 100% agree with you on that. Um, what did your survival cost you, and what did you do to get it back?
Oh, I'm still working on getting it back, but what I lost was the respect of my peers, my family, my friends. Uh, they always saw me as this strong girl, this smart girl, this girl who um just really smart, really capable, really strong. And I think in a lot of ways I lost some respect. because I tolerated it for so long. And I had to be seen in their eyes as a victim. And I don't ever want to be a victim in anyone's eyes. And so building back from that has been really hard for me, just regaining that level of respect and self-reliance and removing their victim glasses from their eyes because I just refuse to be seen that way.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question for you. So in my book, one of my favorite lines that I actually have on there is that I wish the healed version of me could have sat on the bathroom floor with that broken version of me and said, what would you tell yourself the first time that you were scared of your life, the first strangulation? If you could go back in that moment and talk to yourself, what would you tell yourself?
You're not so strong that you're going to make him better. He has to be capable of doing it on his own. And if he doesn't do it without you, he'll never do it with you.
So good. So good. That's great advice. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, I'm honored that you shared your story with me.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really excited to get this story out because, like I said, I don't think women realize how dangerous of a situation that you were in. There's so many women that are strangled, and it's just awful. So, anyways, I'll let you get on with your night, and bless you, and I will be in touch with you.
Ashley said something in this interview that is still rattling around in my head. You're not so strong that you are going to make him better. He has to be capable of doing it on his own. And if he doesn't do it without you, he'll never do it with you. And that right there is the trap so many strong women fall into, myself included. We think if we love harder, stay calmer, explain better, forgive deeper, or carry more, maybe this time it'll change. Ashley's story shows exactly how fast charm can turn into control, how quickly blame can replace accountability, and how dangerous it becomes when abuse escalates behind closed doors. If Ashley's story taught us anything, it's that danger does not always show up looking dangerous at first. Sometimes it looks intelligent, capable, charming, convincing. Sometimes it looks like someone who knows exactly how to make you question your own mind while they slowly escalate the harm. And this is why this story matters. If you're in an abusive relationship or think someone you love might be, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. Ashley, thank you for telling the truth out loud. Thank you for surviving. And thank you for letting your story help someone else feel less alone. If you have a story you would like to share, reach out to us at sunshinefaymedia@gmail.com. That is SUNSHINEFAYMEDIA@gmail.com. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be ready to be honest. Next week, we're taking a closer look at the manipulation tactics woven through Ashley's story in our Manipulation Whisperer episode. And then we'll be bringing you Sadie's story, one that shows us how sometimes healing is messy, complicated, and anything but straight. Her story will absolutely have you on the edge of your seat. We'll see you next time on Stories We Weren't Supposed to Tell. Thank you for joining us.